Parlor is somebody very, very special to me as well. I taught a class on storytelling in January at the Weaverville Community Center. And every now and then, out of these classes, you might get one person who really starts to excel and starts to expand and become more of a performer. In this class, there were two, Brent Wilcox and his wife, Sara. Brent, you're not going to tell tonight. Just sit there and behave. Sara Wilcox is a very, very giving, warm-hearted person. She has given of herself to so many people in her career as a nurse and so many other ways. And she is about to enter your heart warmly and lovingly. So I introduce to you Sara Wilcox.
I always loved The Wizard of Oz as a little girl. That idea that Dorothy clicked her heels and she, oh, I'm so sorry. That she clicked her heels and she said, "There's no place like home." That wasn't my history, though. My home wasn't the best place to be when I was growing up. But I have to tell you, 4 years ago, I learned of Black Mountain. And my husband and I arrived here in Western North Carolina in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains today, 4 years ago.
Wow.
That is true. I wanted to start out in a most positive way because my story has a lot of sadness to it, but it has so much beauty too. And I think that's the important thing. Many of us, through adversity, become so much better people. And that is what has happened for me. 9 years ago, after so many times trying to find out about my birth mother because I was adopted, I had done many things. I had hired a private investigator. I had gone to the registry. Many different ways I tried to find out about my birth because all I had was non-identifying information. Well, when I did Ancestry, I had a hit. My Aunt Mindy, who lived in San Diego, responded and called me. I was 60 years old to find out finally after all that time. It was amazing. What I found out was that my birth mother, Diane Iris Sherry, was the oldest of three, living in New York, in Brooklyn, a Jewish family with a tempestuous father, which means he was abusive, harsh, difficult. When she was 19, she met my father, we think. That's not even a for sure thing. But she married him, and the marriage was very difficult. Interestingly enough, her father's name was Sidney, and so was the man that she married. Sidney Litwack, kind of an interesting name, I thought, when I heard it. And interestingly enough, years later, I would see that name on the back of my altered birth certificate. So my father knew that name, which is interesting to me too, because everything was sealed back then. I was born in 1956. Well, my mother, 3 years after her marriage, they had it annulled, and then she continued to see him or someone and became pregnant. Back in 1956, there was no Roe versus Wade, there was no birth control, and she was very, very perplexed, confused, conflicted. So she went and told her mother when she started gaining weight, 7.5 months later, that she was pregnant, but did not tell her father. So her mother shipped her off. We don't know if it's to an unwed mother's home or to a family member. And she was seeing a psychiatrist at the time, who indeed my father, Dr. Irwin Friedman, who adopted me, was also seeing that same psychiatrist. I was adopted from Louise Wise Adoption Agency, but I lived right after I was born. My grandmother, Rhea, whisked me away in a taxi to a foundling home, which is basically like a hospital setting. And I lived there for almost 9 months. I don't think my mother ever saw me, but she was so devastated. When Diane finally made the decision to do that, it was really tragic for her. You know, my mother was one of those people, this is what my aunt tells me, she would go around with a rose in her teeth and she would do the tango. She was a very outgoing, gregarious, beautiful woman. She loved the arts. She was a kind, caring, loving person, but she came from a family that was extremely dysfunctional. So her father never knew about my birth until right before his death in 1970. My aunt only found out about it like 8 years after I was born, because she was 12 years younger than my mother. My adoptive parents were interesting people. My mother had put my father through school to be a physician. My mother was a teacher, and she was not a very demonstrative, affectionate woman. She was a little bit cold. I don't remember my mother ever saying, "I love you." And I was very delayed. I wasn't able to sit up when I came at almost 9 months old, which is pretty delayed. And I think my parents had these thoughts in their head of what they wanted in a child. And I think they were disappointed, to be honest with you. I wasn't very reactive to them, or responsive, I should say, is a better word. And I was lonely, and I was sad. And I tested them a lot. So when I was 13, my parents sent me to boarding school. And it was really tragic for me because I felt like I was being abandoned again. Like, why would you do that? And I remember in the car with my father, it was a very upscale boarding school. It was in Bristol, Connecticut. It was called Laurel Crest. 400 boys and 40 girls. Yeah. So I was 13. I have to say I'm very proud of myself because I did remain a virgin at that time. But I did end up getting involved with drugs and alcohol very quickly. You know, when you don't feel like you have been given the tools, including protection, guidance, and nurturing, what are you going to do? You're going to look for something, right? Or look to medicate yourself. And that was what I did. And then, of course, I found boys, too. But I found food. And I can remember going into the bathroom with a whole coconut cake and eating the whole thing by myself. A whole cake. So you can see, this is a wounded person, you know. But look at me now. That is not who I am today. So I just want to remind you, when I'm telling you this story, I have come full circle in this, so you don't sit and, oh, poor Sara, because no, Sara is extremely happy. I am the happiest I've ever been in my life. So I got kicked out of boarding school after a year and a half. I was cutting out from school. I didn't want to go. And I started acting out more and more. And when I went back home to my parents and had to go back to school, oh my gosh, all my friends had new friends. And I was on the outs. And it was really hard. And plus, I had not gone to school very much. Not only was I smoking pot, but dropping acid. I mean, a lot of things were going on for me. And I told my father, I can't do this. And my father was really furious with me. You know, these were people that were all highly educated, all lawyers, physicians, teachers, extremely, a lot of status involved with this. And let me just make one comment. We are as sick as our secrets. And my parents had a lot of secrets. And I remember my mother at one point saying to me, "Nobody wants to know what's going on in your life, Sara. Nobody wants to know about your problems or what's going on." That is not a good message to give to a child. And today I really realize, not everybody has the tools to be a good parent. And I don't know why, because I have to tell you, I had the most amazing grandmother. My grandmother Malvina had come over from Hungary when she was 17 on a boat. She lost all of her family in the war. I remember one time my dog, Lucky, got off leash. It was a beagle. By the way, beagles do like to hunt and run. And he did. And he came up with this interaction with this bulldog. And the bulldog just about tore his whole ear off. My grandmother sewed the ear. My grandmother would plant beautiful sunflowers. And I mean, she was just, and I can remember her accent. Whenever I hear somebody that has an accent like that, it always reminds me of it. And she would say, "Sarah Jane." And I hate my name, Sarah Jane, so don't call me that, please. But anyway, I can remember how nurturing she was. If I became sick, and she didn't live with us all the time, but she would come on the weekends. And I can remember her, rubbing me down with alcohol when I had a fever, or when I got stung by a bee. She was just very kind and caring. And my father, there was some positives about my dad too. My dad would take me with him on house calls. And I remember how people just looked at him with such reverence, because he was so brilliant. He was a brilliant man that really didn't know how to be connected personally. So you can see my dilemma, so looking for love in all the wrong places. That was my middle name, because that's what I did. So at 16, my parents placed me in a psychiatric facility, a locked ward, and it was really terrifying. It really, really was. I can remember my roommate, Susan, was catatonic with a feeding tube. I always had this thing about me that I cared deeply about people, always, from the time I was a little girl. I don't know where it came from, but it's who I am. It really is who I am. I remember seeing takedowns in the hospital. What do you think I did to help myself in that hospital? I met a guy. But of course, Stuart. Oh my. Stuart was on Thorazine. I don't know if anybody knows what Thorazine is, but it's a heavy-duty drug. So Stuart and I connected in the most unhealthy way, but it was someone that could see me, not in a healthy way though. He was a womanizer, and he had a gambling problem. But while we were in the psychiatric facility, that was Hillside Hospital, if you should ever want to look it up. And they've had a lot of problems with their stuff too, but anyway. I remember my parents coming in for a family group therapy, and the psychiatrist saying to my father, "Dr. Friedman, is it you that can't cope or your daughter?" Oh. And it was just it was a moment, but it wasn't that much of a moment. My father, okay, so Stuart and I signed ourselves out. We were not homicidal or suicidal, and at that point you could. And so when we got out, we decided we wanted to go to Maryland and live together there. So we lived on a horse farm for a little while. Got into a car accident, went back to Long Island, and he broke it off with me, and I was devastated. how am I going to deal with this? See, any rejection when you feel like you've been abandoned from a young age is like so traumatic. So I told my parents, I got to go. My father's like, what do you mean you got to go? I said, I'm hitchhiking cross country by myself. You're not going to stop me. I'm going. And that's what I did. I got on the Long Island Expressway. I had my little coat on. January. Okay? January. Oh, I'm not kidding. And I always had balls. I'm not kidding. I always was one of those people that I was not afraid. I mean, I just did stuff. And I didn't think about the consequences that would happen. And I ended up, I had a wonderful experience with a farm family that picked me up, and they were very kind. I met lesbians that were very kind and, just decent people. I met some truckers that were really strange that wanted me to go in the back of the cab and get undressed and relax. And I said, no, I don't think I wanted to. And then I would have to talk my way out of it. I always had the ability to talk people out of bad behaviors with me. I'm not kidding. I really did. I would say, what if it was your daughter? Please don't hurt me. And that's what would happen with me. So I'm in the middle of Indiana, and I meet up with this guy that's from Indiana University. And we're hitchhiking together. And we're in Nebraska. And all these trucks are turned over on the sides of the road because there's a blizzard. It's a freaking blizzard. And I have my little suitcase and my little coat and $20. That's it. And so this tow truck stops and picks us up. And they bring us to a strip club. And I'm like, holy crap. I mean, I'm impulsive. I got lots of things, but I was not used to that kind of situation. And the girl is performing behind me, rubbing up against me, and I'm like, holy shit, what do I do? and then she comes around and she says, honey, it ain't gonna hurt you. And that was just one of many, many experiences. I met a guy that was in Pennsylvania, and I was with him like a day, and I thought, and he said, we could live together. You just need to come back in about a month. So I hitchhiked all the way to California, to the Haight-Ashbury district, and I'm on Golden Gate Park, and I'm lying on a hill, and some guy comes over to me and says, hey, you can come and live with us over on the Haight-Ashbury area. And I said, okay. So it was the first time I had rose hips tea, which I had never had. And they were kind people. And in this one room, there were pictures of people's heads this big, the whole room. And I'm like, somebody must have really been tripping on that one. Wow. How did that happen? And then, of course, I was picked up by a guy that was really scary because he was masturbating. And I was like, and I was high when he picked me up. I was getting high with him. And I was like, please let me out. I was like thinking, is he going to cut me up and kill me? What's going to happen to me? And I got out of that too. I mean, it was like a miracle. Well, I had an orthopedic surgeon cousin, God help him, because I ended up on his doorstep at Solana Beach. And he loved my father. He became a doctor because of my father. My parents had wonderful relationships with my cousins, but not so much with their children. But anyway, he was supposed to go to the Bahamas with a girlfriend and never told me and stayed to be kind. I remember Solana Beach was so beautiful. The beach itself, his place. And I remember trying to wash my clothes for the first time. Not good. Because I took the whole thing of laundry detergent and put it in there, and it all overflowed. But he was really nice and kind about it. I have to say, there's some really wonderful people out there, and there's some really crazy mothers. I mean, really crazy people. Well, after that, I took a plane home to my parents, which was really difficult. I'm not going to get into a lot of stuff, but I am going to tell you. I ended up, this is really an interesting part of my story. I met a guy named Michael who was the father of my first child, he ended up getting in trouble with the Internal Revenue Service. So we hitchhiked because the mafia was after us.
Oh.
And we hitchhiked to Indiana, where he knew somebody that had been a short order cook that's mother was a fundamentalist. And I had gotten the crabs. It gets better, doesn't it? I mean, it really gets better. And we told her that we were married. And she believed it until she found a little vial of my stuff that I was using that had my maiden name, and then kicked us out. So we hitchhiked to Arizona from there. And I have to say, Arizona is a wonderful, beautiful place, but it was not so much for me. But I did become pregnant with my first child, and there's something that happened along the way. I didn't have a very supportive husband. He was a sex addict. He had a lot of issues himself. And when I went in to have my daughter, he was not around. And I can remember a woman came in. I never saw her face. And she was rubbing my back. This is back in 1976. No epidural, okay? I was induced, and it was really painful. And I didn't know how to deal with that stuff. But that led to the seed that made me think, oh, I think I want to be a nurse. I want to be a midwife. And so that is how I came to, so I had my daughter, and then I have to say during that same time that I was having my daughter, what I found out later was my daughter was born in September. In January, prior to that, my mother, my birth mother, killed herself by jumping off a building. And so that was what I found out 9 years ago. I didn't know anything about it. By the way, my name at birth was Beth Sandy. So, yeah. So fast forward just a little bit more. My daughter had lots of troubles. You know, when you're not given the tools to be a great parent because you didn't see it modeled, how do you do it? Mm-hmm. I nursed my child. I wanted to be a good mother, but I really didn't know how. And I kept choosing men that were emotionally unavailable. Not that it's their fault, but that's what I chose. So I didn't have support. And my parents, they really weren't supportive either. When my daughter was 17, she became pregnant. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? My beautiful Jennifer became pregnant. She didn't have a supportive man that was the father of her baby. I was a labor and delivery nurse at the time, and I got to deliver my granddaughter. Oh. So you see, everything comes full circle. It is never too late to have a happy childhood. I'll just tell you briefly what I do today. I hike all the time. I have a wonderful husband who really I adore. I have a good relationship with my daughter and my son. I have 10 grandkids and 5 great-grandkids. Whoa! And I got to deliver that grandchild, that first grandchild that I had. But the most important thing is I've learned who I am, and that I cannot expect anybody to make me happy. That is my job. And I have to have boundaries, be able to say what I need and need what I say. Just back up just a little bit. Right when my granddaughter was born, about 4 months later, I was going to a psychiatrist and I got into recovery. So alcohol-free for 31 years and drug-free. I did end up getting up to almost 300 pounds. I'm not there right now. So you can see I've really come full circle in who I am as a human being. And I really want to be a giving, loving member of society. And that's what I try to be today. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Come on, Sara Wilcox. It's glad to stand up.
Stand up, stand up.
The wonderful Brooklyn.
That was amazing.
Thank you.